Somalia, at the tip of the Horn of Africa, is a hotbed of Islamist insurrection. Driving that is the terrorist group Harakat Al-Shabab al-Mujahideen, commonly called Al-Shabab, that carries out acts of terror, along with an armed struggle to overthrow the internationally recognized government in Mogadishu. Al-Shabab, which means the Mujahideen youth movement, imposes its version of strict Salafist Islam on areas under its control. But, as RAND Corporation terrorism analyst Colin Clark notes, Al-Shabab is not as extreme as another terrorist group, Daesh, also known as the Islamic State.
The ideology of Islamist terrorism exists on a spectrum. And if Daesh is at the one extreme end, I'd say Shabab is probably more toward the middle, if not toward the lighter end. So whether or not this group really believes in Sharia is debatable. But they will use that, implement it to gain the resources necessary to control the territory that they're seeking to occupy.
Terror groups need money to fund their attacks and pay fighters. Daesh funds itself through the oil-producing lands it controls, but Somalia has virtually no oil. Tom Keating at the Royal United Services Institute in London says Al-Shabaab has found another way to generate revenue.
Its finances gained in terrific strength as it took territory and was able to tax individuals and businesses who operated in the territory that it controlled as it developed a quasi-governmental role. No access to oil, but an important commodity in the territory that it controls is excellent acacia wood for producing charcoal. And the demand for charcoal in Gulf states across the ocean from Somalia is very strong. And that's an industry that they have historically tapped into very effectively to raise money for their operations.
Analysts Keating and Clark both say Al-Shabaab is not significantly involved in another big money earner that has recently plagued the waters off Somalia's coast, piracy. That, they say, was the work of other smaller operators. And thanks to stepped-up international naval patrols and interdictions, piracy has lately become far less of a problem. In addition to its attacks against Somali government and African Union forces, Al-Shabaab has staged a series of high-visibility terrorist operations. The most spectacular took place in Nairobi, Kenya in September 2013. There, Al-Shabaab killed 67 people at the upscale Westgate Mall in a siege that lasted several days. They've also conducted operations in Djibouti and Uganda. And in February, they claimed responsibility for an unsuccessful attempt by a suicide bomber to bring down an airliner in flight. Shortly after the Nairobi Mall attack, U.S. Undersecretary of State for Africa Linda Thomas-Greenfield testified before Congress that while the United States is not engaged in on-the-ground combat in Somalia, U.S. forces are working closely with the African Union force called AMISOM. She praised AMISOM's effectiveness.
The successes of the African Union mission in Somalia, AMISOM troop contributing countries, and strategic partners to combat and eviscerate Al-Shabaab are demonstrating the strength of an African-led model. Nonetheless, this Somalia-based al-Qaeda affiliate remains a dangerous presence.
Among the most recent U.S. attacks against Al-Shabaab was an airstrike in early March against a training camp. It killed an estimated 150 fighters. The Pentagon's main focus, however, is to strengthen AMISOM, so its troops, most of them from East African nations, can finish off Al-Shabaab. U.S. Army trainer Sergeant Lucas Velmer says AMISOM's success would give Somali President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud and his 4-year-old government breathing room to win over the Somali people.
What we're trying to do is, by conducting this training with the different troop contributing countries to AMISOM, is bring the population to the side of AMISOM and ultimately the Somali government.
At the same time, Undersecretary of State Greenfield makes it clear that the Somali government must behave responsibly and credibly to win the people's respect and ultimately to suppress Al-Shabaab.
Al-Shabaab must be stopped. The federal government of Somalia must increase its capacity to counter Al-Shabaab, unify a fractured political system, and provide basic services to the Somali people.
RUSI analyst Tom Keating and RAND's Colin Clark are among the experts who say that with Al-Shabaab, as with many other terrorist groups, the way to beat them is a combination of good governance and economic development that makes radicalism less attractive, along with a robust effort to eliminate terrorists wherever they stand.